What if I told you that the absolute secret to finishing your next massive multi-month project is well, to intentionally waste your time?
Yeah, which sounds completely backwards, I know.
Right. Seriously, though, think about the last time you decided to learn a complex new skill. Or maybe you were facing down a really grueling certification for work. If you're anything like most of us, you probably started by trying to optimize every single variable.
Oh, absolutely. The spreadsheet comes out immediately.
Exactly. You mapped out the perfect schedule, you downloaded like the most efficient productivity apps, and you tried to squeeze maximum output from every waking second. And how did that actually work out for you? Did you achieve total robotic perfection? Or did you hit a wall and completely burn out by week 3?
It's a wildly common cycle. I mean, the people who try to hyper-optimize their schedules from day one are, statistically speaking, often the ones most likely to abandon the project entirely. We treat long-term goals like a math equation to be solved, completely ignoring the psychological toll of that kind of sustained, monotonous effort.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking today. Welcome to the deep dive, by the way. Today we're looking at a really fascinating document titled RuneScape
Which is such an interesting source text for us to dig into.
It really is. Now, on the surface, this source material looks like a blueprint for playing the classic online game old school RuneScape. But our mission for this deep dive is not to give you a gaming strategy guide. We are exploring this document because it is an absolute masterclass in behavioral psychology, creativity, and the art of avoiding burnout.
Right, it proposes a completely radical framework for tackling huge goals by choosing what the author calls narrative efficiency over traditional hyper-optimized efficiency.
Yeah, and the vehicle for this entire philosophy is a character the author created named Mac the Entertainer, which, I mean, millions of people play this specific game to win, right? To maximize their digital wealth, acquire the mathematically best skills, all of that. But Mac enters this space with a completely different objective.
He does. He runs a character build under the working title, Chunky Chuckles.
He chuckles. I love it.
So good. And right from page 1, his philosophy is just set in stone. He writes, "This ain't an account. This is a bit that got out of hand." He wants to log into this sprawling medieval fantasy world, and immediately his character feels like, a guy who has a podcast that literally nobody asked for.
Which is just such a hilarious image. But what's fascinating here is how it completely shifts the paradigm of how we approach massive tasks. His early game motto is, "I'm not grinding, I'm building episodes."
Yeah, what's fascinating here is that he isn't looking at a checklist of tasks he has to passively complete. He is framing the entire undertaking as an active story he is writing.
Right.
And this directly targets the trap of extrinsic motivation. When you play or work purely for the end goal, like the promotion, the final grade, or reaching the max level, your brain is basically delaying its dopamine hit until the very end. The process itself feels like a punishment.
Yeah, it becomes a total slog.
Exactly. By treating the process as an episode, Mac creates intrinsic motivation. The joy comes from the doing, not just the finishing.
Okay, let's unpack this and look at how that actually translates to navigating the world. Because he uses a concept I find incredibly compelling, which he calls emotional chunking.
Oh, this part is brilliant.
Right. So when Max spawns into the starting town of Lumbridge, he doesn't immediately pull up a guide for the fastest way to level up. His attitude is literally, "Yo, what's good, Gielinor?" Which is the name of the game's fantasy world, by the way. It's, "Yeah, boy."
Yeah.
No skills, no money, just vibes.
And that introduces his golden rule for the whole run. He says, if it's efficient, I probably shouldn't do it.
Wow.
I know. Most players look at the map and they trace the shortest possible distance between two optimal resource points to save time. They basically reduce this rich world to a spreadsheet. But Mac looks at that same starting town of Lumbridge and decides, well, this geographic area is my broke boy beginnings chunk.
He wanders into a random field, right? Sees some cows, and instead of calculating how much experience points they yield, he just says, "Bet, I'm a rancher now." And then he spots some low-level goblins and decides that's his ops arc, meaning they are now his mortal enemies for purely narrative reasons. The neighboring town of Draenor isn't a place to efficiently level up his woodcutting skill. No, it becomes the designated epicenter for suspicious activities and mild crimes.
He completely ignores conventional logic. He follows what he calls a vibe GPS.
A vibe GPS.
Yeah. If a dirt path looks like it might have a funny story at the end of it, he takes it. He turns these random side paths into main plots.
Let's ground that in psychology for a second, actually.
I'll do.
What Mac is doing here is fundamentally reducing his cognitive load. When you are hyper-optimizing, you are constantly battling decision fatigue. You're always asking yourself, is this the fastest route? Am I wasting seconds? Is there a better tool?
Oh man, that is so exhausting.
It really is. By navigating via this Vibe GPS, he completely removes the friction of feeling like he's constantly behind schedule. You literally cannot be behind schedule if the schedule is just whatever happens to you next. That makes total sense. I mean, that is exactly how we navigate a new city when we're on vacation. When you travel to Tokyo or Rome, you don't walk an optimal grid to maximize your step-to-sightseeing ratio.
Right, you'd miss all the best stuff.
Exactly. You wander down a random alleyway because it feels like there might be a cool little coffee shop hidden back there. And usually, those spontaneous detours become the absolute highlight of the trip. So why don't we treat our daily learning or our massive long-term work projects with that same sense of discovery?
Well, we don't do it because society sort of conditions us to view wandering as failing. Like if you aren't moving in a straight line, you're doing it wrong. But Mac explicitly notes that this in-game approach mirrors his real-life coping mechanisms.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he is taking the inherent chaos of the game, and by extension, the chaos of life, and wrangling it into a narrative that he controls.
Okay, I have to jump in here and play devil's advocate for a second, because there's a part of this document that really made me scratch my head. Mac notes that he only plays for maybe 1 to 3 hours a day. And some days, he plays 0 hours because, in his words, he's touching grass like it's a rare drop.
Which is just incredibly funny internet slang for logging off and going outside.
It's so good. But when he actually is online, he is intentionally taking massive detours, over-committing to these dumb bits and talking to computer-controlled characters like they are guests on a talk show.
Yeah, he really gets into it.
But if I have a massive project due at work, I can't just take double the time because I'm developing lore for my spreadsheets. Doesn't this intentional inefficiency just make the whole experience a colossal waste of time compared to the players who are actually putting their heads down and making progress?
From a purely mathematical, stopwatch-oriented standpoint, yes, absolutely it does. But that assumes the measurement of success is purely mathematical. In the real world, the hyper-optimized spreadsheet usually doesn't get finished at all because the person making it burns out halfway through. Efficiency metrics only measure the speed of your progress while you're actively moving.
Okay.
They completely fail to account for the probability of you quitting.
Wow. Wait, that is huge.
Yeah.
Efficiency metrics don't account for the probability of quitting.
Exactly. And that is why Mac weaponizes his identity. He outlines a core rule for his progression. Every single session needs a moment where he steps back and says, "This is dumb, but it's kind of fire."
I love that quote so much.
Right. He admits this whole persona is humor masking insecurity. But through that humor, he is deliberately creating what he calls an emotional attachment meta. He isn't wasting time at all. He is actively building an emotional anchor to the task, so he won't quit.
Weaponizing identity. Let's look at how he actually does that with the game's mechanics.
Yeah.
Because he takes these static coded numbers and transforms them into deep psychological profiles. Take combat, for example.
Oh yeah, the combat choices are fascinating.
You can fight with swords, magic, or bows. Mac specifically chooses ranged combat, not because of its damage output, but because it gives him main character energy.
And the way he justifies his combat tactics is just brilliant. There is a common strategy in these types of games called safe spotting. Essentially, you trap an enemy behind a rock or a fence so they can't physically reach you.
Right.
And then you shoot them from afar without taking any damage. It's a very standard, optimal strategy, but Mac refuses to view it mechanically. He describes his safe spotting as emotional avoidance, but make it strategic.
He literally writes in the source document, "I got issues, but from a distance, though."
Yeah.
It is so self-aware. And it bleeds into his leveling, too.
How so?
Well, when he hits level 40 in ranged combat, he proudly notes that he is now emotionally unavailable but accurate. And he levels his other combat stats just enough to achieve what he calls bare minimum violence.
That is so funny. And we can't forget his defensive skills. He trains his prayer skill exactly to level 43 because that specific level unlocks a spell that protects you from taking damage.
Oh, right, the protection spells.
Yeah, but Mac rebrands that spell as Protect from Regret. By assigning a psychological meaning to a static number, the grind to reach level 43 is no longer a boring chore. It becomes a character arc. He isn't grinding numbers, he is acquiring a personality trait.
And that extends to the game's economy and crafting systems, too. Making bows and arrows from scratch, the fletching skill, is incredibly repetitive. You click wood, you click a knife over and over.
It's famously tedious.
Exactly. But to Mac, Fletching is his personal branding. He calls the arrows he creates handcrafted trauma delivery systems. He turns this mindless clicking into a frugal, meditative process. He actually compares it to sitting in his bedroom making highly curated Spotify playlists, but, with wooden logs instead of songs.
Which naturally dictates how he earns money, too. If you are playing optimally, you look up the highest yield gold per hour activity, and you do that endlessly.
Right, you just farm gold.
But Mac refuses. He makes his first couple 100,000 gold pieces through accidental entrepreneurship. He sells absolute junk to other players using nothing but unearned confidence. He even hoards low-level, practically worthless feathers simply because he decides in his head they got lore.
Even the game's massive quests are filtered through this lens. There's a simple introductory quest called Cook's Assistant, where you literally just grab some flour and an egg for a chef. Mac does it because helping a stressed-out cook is a relatable struggle.
Right, it makes sense for his character.
But when he is offered the epic Dragon Slayer quest, which is a major milestone for most players, his character's response is, "Bro, I just got here, relax."
He is enforcing artificial boundaries based entirely on narrative consistency. If an action doesn't match the emotional state of his character, he doesn't do it, regardless of the rewards. And this psychological framework is the exact reason he survives what gamers call the mid-game wall.
Oh, let's dig into that mid-game wall, because this is where the optimizers start dropping like flies. According to the document, a normal, highly optimized player hits the mid-game phase in about 40 to 80 hours of playtime.
Which is already a huge time investment.
Yeah. And they do this by relentlessly grinding out Slayer tasks, which are essentially just repetitive bounty hunting missions, where the game tells you to go kill 100 of a specific monster over and over. Mac, by contrast, takes anywhere from 60 to over 120 hours to reach that same threshold.
And the mid-game is notoriously where burnout occurs in any long-term pursuit. Think about learning a language. The early game is fun. You learn how to say hello, you learn colors, you see rapid progress.
It's super engaging at first.
Exactly. But the mid-game is where you have to memorize hundreds of irregular verb conjugations. The extrinsic rewards slow down, the dopamine gap widens. This is where the hyper-efficient players quit.
But Mac doesn't quit, because his definition of reaching the mid-game has nothing to do with stats or unlocking a specific armor set. For Mac, the trigger for hitting the mid-game is the moment his account has inside jokes.
And having inside jokes with yourself is a profound psychological anchor. It's the moment he realizes he's refusing to sell a statistically useless item to a vendor because in his mind, that digital item has been through things with him.
Yeah.
Or when he commits to only using a specific batch of arrows because they were crafted during a dramatic emotional arc of his journey.
And once he enters this phase, he finally unlocks a decent amount of money, about $500,000 to $1 million gold. But does he use it to buy powerful weapons to speed up his progress? No.
Yeah.
He wants that money because it means, and I quote, "I can afford to be stupid more efficiently."
That's incredible.
He starts treating dangerous areas like side quests in a sitcom. He visits this deadly dungeon called the Stronghold of Security, not for the gold reward at the end, but because his character needs to experience a moral lesson arc.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, here lies the secret strategic advantage of the emotional attachment meta. The hyper-efficient player maps out the optimal route, grinds relentlessly, optimizes every click, and then their brain realizes the reward isn't worth the suffering, and they abandon the game.
They just walk away.
Right. But Mac vibes his way through the world. He creates soft restrictions like, only use gear I've earned in a funny way, or if a training spot feels soulless, leave immediately. Because he protects the joy of the experience, he actually finishes more arcs in the long run.
This translates so perfectly to the real world. Imagine you decide you need to read a dense 800-page historical biography. If you force yourself to read exactly 50 pages a day, strictly to optimize your reading schedule, it immediately becomes a chore.
Oh, you'll start dreading it by day 3.
Exactly. You'll dread picking it up. You'll burn out. And that book will end up acting as a coaster on your nightstand. But if you're reading and you stop to Google a weird footnote and you fall down a Wikipedia rabbit hole about 18th century maritime law for an hour mathematically, you took way longer to get through that chapter.
Sure.
But you actually care about the material now. You gave the knowledge context and lore.
The Wikipedia rabbit hole is your vibe GPS in action. By allowing your curiosity to hijack your efficiency, you are building meaning. And meaning is the ultimate antidote to quitting.
If meaning prevents you from quitting, where do you ultimately end up? Because eventually, you reach the late game of any massive project, And Mac's vision for his endgame is a complete rejection of normal standards.
It really is. In RuneScape, the ultimate endgame goal for almost everyone is the pursuit of the Max Cape. It is a cosmetic item awarded for reaching level 99, the absolute maximum in every single skill in the game.
Which sounds exhausting.
It requires thousands of hours of incredibly repetitive clicking. It is the pinnacle of extrinsic reward. But Mac actively rejects this. He states he is chasing a mixtape account.
A mixtape account. He wants every part of his digital footprint to represent a phase, a mood, or a specific version of himself from the time he spent playing.
Which is why he flat out refuses to max out his combat stats. The maximum combat level is 126. Mac plans to stop around level 100 or 110. He argues that he doesn't need to be the strongest entity in the world, he just needs to be himself at full expression.
Right.
His entire build was never about standing still and tanking heavy damage. It was about moving differently and thinking differently. To conform to the optimal combat stats at the end would be a betrayal of the character.
Out of all the dozens of skills available, he only plans to fully max out maybe 2 to 4 of them, because grinding anything more than that just feels forced. But the ones he chooses to get to level 99 are deeply symbolic to his journey. 99 range combat is locked in because, in his words, I learned how to fight without losing myself.
That's almost poetic.
It is. And 99 Fletching is deeply emotional for him, too. Everything I needed, I learned how to make.
Look at how he reframes his biggest combat accomplishments, too. Midway through the game, players usually face off against a massive boss monster named Jad. Defeating Jad rewards you with a highly coveted item called a fire cape.
Okay.
For most players, Jad is a solved equation. You bring the mathematically best in slot gear, meaning the statistically superior armor, and you follow a guide step by step.
But Mac doesn't do that. For his first fire cape attempt, he refuses to buy optimal supplies. He goes in using only potions and food he made himself. He's wildly overprepared, his heart is racing, he treats the fight like a high-stakes therapy session.
Exactly.
The victory isn't just his character defeating a monster, it's Mac defeating his own self-doubt.
Yeah.
The cape actually means something.
And his digital bank vault perfectly reflects this mindset. A normal player organizes their vault by monetary value. Mac's vault is full of favorite items with lore. He keeps his very first self-made bow. Statistically, it is utter trash. You couldn't sell it for a single gold piece.
But emotionally.
Emotionally, it is a legendary artifact. He keeps a specific outfit that is nowhere near the best in slot for stats, but he wears it constantly just because it feels right. It's his character's iconic silhouette.
What about the rarest items in the game? There are these cosmetic pets you can get, little followers that trail behind your character. They are insanely rare drops that players will spend hundreds of hours doing the exact same activity just to acquire.
Mac completely rejects the pet grind. He views pets as plot twists, not goals. If he happens to randomly get a pet heron while he's doing a chill, reflective fishing session late at night, he doesn't celebrate it as a statistical triumph.
Right, it's more about the moment.
Exactly. It becomes a core memory anchored to that specific real-life evening. It's a souvenir from a good day, not a trophy from a miserable grind.
But wait, if there's no endpoint, if there's no max cape to chase, and you aren't trying to beat a final boss to roll the credits, how do you know when you're actually done? What happens after the endgame if you aren't trying to finish it?
When confronted with that exact question, Mac delivers perhaps the most profound truth in the entire document. He simply says, I'll stop when it stops feeling alive.
Wow.
Yeah. The goal of this massive multi-year project was never to reach the finish line. The goal was, as he puts it, becoming someone along the way. After the endgame, he just plans to revisit old chunks of the map, start new mini-arcs, or completely reinvent the character all over again.
So bringing this all together for you, the listener, we started this deep dive by asking about the last time you tried to grind through a massive project. The ultimate takeaway from Mac the Entertainer is the transformative power of narrative efficiency. Whether you are learning a new language, prepping for a massive presentation at work, or studying a complex new field, trying to mathematically optimize every single minute of your life is a trap. It leads directly to burnout. Turning your grind into a story, giving your daily tasks their own lore, allowing for inside jokes with yourself, and following your Vibe GPS down a Wikipedia rabbit hole isn't a waste of time.
Not at all.
It is the ultimate defense mechanism against quitting. You don't have to be the most optimized person in the room. You just have to make the climb worth remembering.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Take Mac's concept of the mixtape account and apply it to your own real-world digital footprint. Look at your social media history, your personal notes, or the trajectory of your career.
That's a great exercise.
Are you currently playing the normal route? Are you grinding out your days, optimizing your profile for an algorithm, or tweaking your resume to perfectly match a corporate ladder? Or, if someone logged into your life 300 hours from now, would they see a genuine character arc? What would happen if, starting tomorrow, you stopped optimizing your life for the meta and started playing for the lore?